Part 8. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mishita Di. Chapter 71. He picked up the compass and took a look. It seemed that this strange object had completely lost the predictive function mentioned by Gongxing Zhan after marking Gaoqiang. However, Gaoqiang didn't care about this mark. As the saying goes, more debts are better than more debts. He has been remembered by the elves of a certain plane. What can the Wuji League do? As for the others, Gaoqiang looked at the dozen elders of the Shangji League. The elders took a few steps back in unison. If it weren't for the rising flames behind them, they would have been ready to run away when Gongxing Zhan was talking to Gaoqiang just now. It didn't make any difference whether Gaoqiang killed these people or not. Anyway, because of the mark, Wuji League would definitely know who killed Gongxing Zhan. The number of surviving lords in this game is less than 40%, the game is over. The sudden reminder of the war game was like a heavenly sound in the eyes of the dozen elders. It seems that the kerosene tanks dropped by the wind god Pterosaur killed many lords of the Upper Alliance. Therefore, the number of lords, which was infinitely close to the critical point, finally dropped by 40%. Settle it quickly. Before the reminder of the war game continued to come, more than a dozen elders could not wait to shout. The next moment, their figures drifted away and disappeared directly in this war game. And all this was naturally seen by Shasha and others. Among the surviving lords, the weak ones were grateful for their luck, and the strong ones beat their chests and stamped their feet for not being able to win. The only difference was that lords of all races around the world were disappearing, and they could not wait to leave this ghost game. Shortly after the war game announcement appeared, Gaoqiang had become the last lord in the world who had not yet settled. The breath of civilization has disappeared. Grandma Zuzu seemed to feel something and said. Hearing this, all the warriors present put down their weapons. They understood what Grandma Zuzu meant, which meant that they had won. After awakening, they once again took the world into their own hands until the next reincarnation began. Until the next civilization that dared to challenge their bottom line appeared. Woo wow. At this time, Sasha suddenly took off her heavy armor and threw herself on Gaoqiang. So the Lord is leaving. When the chef sister is not around in the future, will there be no one to play with Sasha? Why does it sound like a curse to me? Juluo pulled Sasha away from Gaoqiang with a black line on his head. Then he turned his head to look at Gaoqiang, smiled, and said a meaningful word, Lord, see you in the future. Your stagnation time has ended. Countdown to settlement, 3, 2, 1. Gaoqiang could only say goodbye in the end, and then his vision suddenly rose to the sky. In a short moment, he returned to the position where he first entered the war game, the top of this world. From here, you can clearly overlook the territories of the 4 tribes. The original forest of the elves was completely destroyed and turned into a burnt land, and the mountains of the knolls were full of traces of the battle with the undead. Because of the arrival of the lords, this world has been devastated beyond imagination. Your war contribution is being calculated. The reminder sound of the war game brought Gaoqiang back to his senses. Since you have 900,000 war contributions, your contribution will be converted into 90,000 war coins. War coins. Regarding this, the school only briefly mentioned it a few times when Gaoqiang was in class. It is said that it is the hard currency for transactions between lords. However, the specific role and value were not explained in detail. 900,000 war contributions can get 90,000 war coins. With this difficulty, the school probably didn't expect them to get much. Of course, none of this is important. The next thing is the real highlight. Because of the victory in the war, a large amount of land and resources were obtained. It was not until he looked at the constantly weighted data in front of him that Gaoqiang deeply realized what Gongxing Zhan meant. Although there are many things to obtain, they are useless for a casual person like him. There is no power behind him that can convert these into value, and in the end, it can only be regarded as a tiny contribution to his own plane. Gao Qiang simply skipped these contents and looked directly at the bottom, which was also the settlement reward he was most looking forward to. Since you participated in the total war, your contribution is 200%. You can take away any item you have owned and use it in your future games. The next moment, a selection interface appeared in front of Gao Qiang. It includes the miracle building, ancient Stonehenge, and the ancient relics of the Foka altar, enlightenment. You can also choose one of the people such as Shasha and Julugo to bring into the future war game. However, on this interface, Gao Qiang found that Julugo and Shasha, who have a large number of golden entries, can only be counted in the item level of the wonders. On the contrary, the kind Zuzu Grandma was actually marked as a miracle. But Gao Qiang's real choice has never been these. After searching for a long time in the selection column, Gao Qiang finally found what he wanted to find among a large number of useless herbal wonders. Territory type. Territory type. Selection conditions: win this game and get the first place in the war contribution of this clan. Note, depending on the type of territory, the equivalent item level is also different. Gao Qiang can understand this. If the territory type is very ordinary, it can only be considered a wonder at most and can be easily taken away. But if it is very strong, I am afraid that you will have to choose above the miracle to make a choice. I just don't know what level my territory type will be considered. Thinking of this, Gao Qiang stretched out his finger and clicked in. Territory type: Fallen Empire. Introduction: this empire stood at the top long before any known country. Level: unable to display the level? Gao Qiang was obviously stunned. He didn't expect this to happen in the war game. Then Gao Qiang felt fortunate. If he could only choose items below miracles, he might not have the chance to play the Fallen Empire in the future. But now, he can choose anything. Without hesitation, Gao Qiang directly fixed the Fallen Empire as his territory type forever. And the settlement of this war game finally came to an end. Gao Qiang's consciousness continued to fly upwards, and the ground below him became smaller and smaller until it disappeared completely. Suddenly, the light of the searchlight hit Gao Qiang's head. Gao Qiang understood that he was back. "What are you standing there for, you bastard?" A burst of angry curses came from the radio in the air. The next moment, an armed helicopter flew over Gao Qiang's head, and the machine gun it carried spewed out flames, tearing the giant python behind Gao Qiang to pieces. The warmth of the flames made Gao Qiang quickly recover from the discomfort caused by the war game transmission. At this moment, the place where he was standing was no longer the open space where the principal brought them. This place has completely turned into a vast primeval forest. At this time, another helicopter landed above Gao Qiang's head and lowered the rope ladder. An impatient voice came from the helicopter: "Hurry up and get on the plane, kid. The land merge this time is too large, we have to rush to rescue others, and we don't have time to waste with you." Lord of all people, am I the only one in the Fallen Empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 72. After boarding the rescue helicopter, Gao Qiang found that there were several other people besides himself on the helicopter. These people should be the same as himself, all lords who returned from the war game today. It was obvious that they were in bad luck. They had just recovered from the war game, but they never thought that this trip home felt like another war game. Because of Gao Qiang, they almost became a delicious meal for all kinds of beasts in the elf forest as soon as they returned. Gao Qiang even saw a missile flying past him and directly into the depths of the forest. I wonder if the army encountered something difficult to deal with. Name. At this time, a soldier in charge of roll call on the helicopter asked unhappily. Gao Qiang. Yeah. I don't know if it was Gao Qiang's illusion, but when he said his name, the soldier's tone was much calmer. But even so, he didn't show Gao Qiang any good face. It seems that the expansion of the land is not something worth being happy about for them. After recording Gao Qiang's name, the soldier who called the roll suddenly turned his head and looked at the driver. "We received the main protection target, we are ready to evacuate." The driver nodded, and then the helicopter suddenly lifted up and turned around to fly to the outskirts of the forest. "What's going on?" The students on the plane looked at each other. But thinking that it would be a good thing to evacuate early, no one asked any questions. The helicopter flew very fast and took everyone away from the outskirts of the forest in a short time. At this moment, many soldiers outside the forest were busy setting up cordons, and a large number of heavy firepower weapons were mobilized here. Gao Qiang looked down from above and saw that on the highway in the distance, tanks and armored vehicles were rushing towards the cordon. The helicopter sent a signal to clear a piece of land on the ground for landing. After landing on the ground, the other people on the helicopter were obviously relieved. "Come with me." After the other people on the helicopter got off one by one, the soldier who was responsible for the roll call called Gao Qiang alone. Then Gao Qiang was brought into a tent in the temporary camp. Entering the tent, the soldier's expression instantly became serious, and he quickly stepped forward and saluted. "Report to the brigade commander, the main protection target of this rescue operation has been brought here. Continue the rescue operation." "Yes." After saluting again, the soldier just now bypassed Gao Qiang and walked out quickly without staying for a moment. Most of the other soldiers in the tent were signal soldiers, who were issuing various orders in a hurry. At present, only the brigade commander and Gao Qiang can still find time to spare in this tent. The brigade commander looked at Gao Qiang and smiled kindly. "I am Bai Yinian, the brigade commander of the 24th Special Operations Brigade, and the commander-in-chief of this rescue operation." Then Bai Yinian greeted Gao Qiang and asked Gao Qiang to stand next to him. "Gao Qiang, right? You are not a soldier, so you don't need to be so serious here. Bringing you here is actually a request from the higher UPS, and this should be a good thing for you." His attitude towards Gao Qiang was obviously much better than that of the soldiers just now. However, since he approached Bai Yinian, Gao Qiang's eyes have been on a computer beside Bai Yinian. There are actually several wargame contribution rankings listed there. In one of the lists, he is firmly in the first place with an outrageous score of 900,000 war contribution. All the people on the other lists combined did not even catch up with 1/10 of Gao Qiang. After all, on the other lists, the person ranked first only had a few thousand war contribution points. Following Gao Qiang's gaze, after scanning the rankings, Bai Yinian glanced at Gao Qiang with a smile. "Gao Qiang. By the way, do you really know what good you have done?" "Am I in trouble?" Gao Qiang asked hesitantly. Seeing that Gao Qiang really didn't understand, Bai Yinian casually opened the satellite imaging on another computer. Between the two city-level administrative districts, there are 800 square kilometers of land out of thin air. What do you think you did? No wonder the soldiers were in a hurry. 800 square kilometers appeared when no one reacted, and caught the military off guard. They couldn't have anticipated the current situation at all. Because the way the war game was adopted was to calculate the land represented by the lord by weight. Logically speaking, the battlefields that these students can enter, no matter how outrageous, can't overlap the land rights to 800 square kilometers. Unless a lot of lords died in a war game, and no one came to share these weights, but that was a very small probability. In previous years, after calculating the number of victories and deaths, the land weights hardly changed with one increase and one decrease. The military would feel at ease to let the school set the entry point for the war game in the suburbs. Who would have thought that something unexpected would happen today? This is also the most confusing point for Bai Yinian. Judging from the data, there are many humans alive in other planes. Even if the humans won the war Gao Qiang was in, why did their plane take all the power? I can't figure it out. I can't figure it out at all. If we had known this, we shouldn't have let these students enter the war game in the suburbs. If we had, it wouldn't be like this now. The forest separates the two urban areas that are residential areas, and there are countless threats in it. Now the safety of citizens and even the military is difficult to guarantee. It would be strange if the lower-level soldiers have any good attitude. Shaking his head, Bayanian threw away the thoughts in his mind. This matter really can't be blamed on Gao Qiang. After all, the first war game in adulthood is inevitable. It was a major mistake of the strategic department that the students were not expected to seize such a large piece of land. Report. At this time, another soldier made a report and entered the tent. Behind him followed a frowning girl. The girl had a little blood on her body, and it seemed that she had just come out of the war game. Report to the brigade commander, the key protection target has been brought. Continue the rescue operation. Yes. After the soldier hurriedly left the tent, the girl frowned and looked at Bayanian, with a scrutinizing look. Before the two of them could speak, he took the lead in introducing himself. I am Long Xianyeo from Teng Long Group, and my father is Long Xiwan, the chairman of Teng Long Group. I just came back from the war game, and I need to rest. The military forced me to stay, which may disappoint the taxpayers. Bayanian's face changed. After hearing Long Xianyeo's self-revealed identity, he was confused about what it meant. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shida Di. Chapter 73. Teng Long Group is a commercial chaebol with great influence in society. Long Xianyeo directly revealed her identity when they met, which also meant that Bayanian should speak frankly and stop using official language. After all, the military is not the only one in power, and it is still quite taboo to face the major chaebols and academic chaebols. So Bayanian no longer wanted to get close to him or keep him in suspense. Waving his hand to let the soldiers take out two big red certificates, Bayanian personally handed them to Gao Qiang and Long Xianyeo solemnly. Mr. Gao, M.S. Long. As the first place in the contribution list of the war game you participated in, you two are the future geniuses of our human race. Now I solemnly issue the admission notice to you two on behalf of the highest institution of learning. Gao Qiang looked at the certificate in his hand, and the certificate felt indescribable. So, in fact, it is not that there is no power in his plane, but that he did not have the qualifications to contact it in the past. However, Long Xianyeo laughed. The highest institution of learning. How can a military commander learn to be a dog for the school clique? Miss Long, please watch your words. Bayanian's face was not very good after being criticized. He actually had no ill will towards the two of them, everything was meant by the higher UPS. But compared to Gao Qiang, the daughter of Teng Long Group was really hostile to them. Long Xianyeo held up the admission letter in her hand and shook it in front of her. Although I haven't heard of the name of the highest institution of learning, if I guess correctly, this should be a place related to war games, right? Bayanian nodded, acknowledging Long Xianyeo's statement. Long Xianyeo sneered, then you should know before you invite me that as a member of Teng Long Group, war games are not among my choices at all. This is my first time to participate in a war game, and it will be the last time. After that, Long Xianyeo threw the admission letter and turned to leave. However, at this moment, several soldiers blocked Long Xianyeo's way. Because of Long Xianyeo's commotion, Gao Qiang sensed a bad atmosphere. They don't seem to have the power to choose this admission letter? Sorry, Miss Long. Bayanian waved his hand and asked the soldiers to retreat, but they didn't go far. Please allow me to reiterate that this is an order from above and has nothing to do with me. Now that all the admitted personnel have arrived, do you need me to personally send Miss Long over? Long Xianyeo stared at Bai Yinian coldly for a moment, then looked at the soldiers blocking the door of the tent. No need. Then he bent down to pick up the admission letter again, glanced at Gao Qiang, and pulled Gao Qiang out with him. Hey you. Gao Qiang didn't expect that Long Xianyeo was so familiar. Before Gao Qiang could say hello to Bai Yinian, he was pulled out by Long Xianyeo. However, it seems that after Long Xianyeo's tossing, Bai Yinian seems to have lost interest in communicating with Gao Qiang. After leaving the tent, a group of soldiers quietly surrounded the two of them in a large circle. It seemed that they were passing by casually, but it was more like they were monitoring the two of them. Long Xianyeo sneered. The military is still the same. It means that you, who know nothing, will be confused by their appearance. So, you know a lot. Gao Qiang looked at Long Xianyeo, who was pulling his sleeves in front of him, and showed a curious expression. I dare not say that I know a lot, but I know a lot more than you who come from a low-level school. After leaving Bai Yinian's tent, Long Xianyeo stopped putting on a face. With a smile, Long Xianyeo explained some things to Gao Qiang while on the way. For example, a large amount of free intelligence about war games approved by the higher UPS was actually intercepted by various academic tycoons. Unless you join the camp of the academic tycoons, ordinary civilians should not know even the intelligence that should be free. For this, the higher UPS mentioned by Bai Yinian never cared about it. Maybe he didn't want to care, or maybe he was too lazy to care. After all, it was just some free information. Although Long Xianyeo was not a commoner, she couldn't pee in the same pants as the academic cliques. She always looked down on these academic cliques. What the highest institution of learning, in Long Xianyeo's view, was just another bigger academic clique that wanted to take in a dog. It's just that this dog was taken over by Gao Qiang and her Long Xianyeo. Speaking of which, aren't you surprised why I know where to go without someone pointing the way? Long Xianyeo glanced at Gao Qiang and showed a wise expression. I have been involved in the family business since I was a child, and have dealt with the military and academic cliques a lot. As soon as he opened his mouth, I knew where he was going to fart next. Okay, now we are here. Long Xianyeo pointed to a helicopter of a more advanced model in the distance, showing an expression that I had expected. But Gao Qiang focused all his attention on the academic cliques that Long Xianyeo was talking about, and didn't pay attention to what Long Xianyeo said later. The expected expression of surprise and admiration did not appear, and Long Xianyeo's face suddenly fell. At this time, someone else hurried over. Gao Qiang, brother Qiang. Suyukei's shout attracted everyone's attention. Near the helicopter, in addition to Suyukei, there were 3 young men and women. They also held the same admission letter as Gao Qiang. After Gao Qiang came to his senses, he counted the number of people present and understood. On the display screen beside Bai Yinian, there were contribution data of 3 war games. In other words, the 6 people present should all have data at the top of a certain war game. Perhaps first or second, or maybe top 10. Of course, it is impossible to say that there are so few low-level battlefields open at the same time in the war game. Those guys who didn't get any rankings should not have been able to enter the eyes of the highest institution of learning. Speaking of which, brother Qiang, you haven't talked to me about your legendary deeds in the war game. Suyukei's words aroused the curiosity of several young people. Legend? What legend? Then, in the expectant expressions of everyone, Suyukei naturally told the story of Gao Qiang in the Stone Age, when he led a large group of flying dragons to kill the Upper Alliance. But the more he talked, the more off-topic he got. Gao Qiang looked at Suyukei, who seemed to be talking endlessly, and suddenly reached out and patted Suyukei on the shoulder. Not for anything else, just because Suyukei was getting more and more outrageous. If he continued talking like this, he might even bring up his love story with Wargame. What's the matter, brother Qiang? I haven't even started talking about the days when you were obsessed with Wargame. Okay, stop talking, Gao Qiang hurriedly interrupted Su Yukei's subjective assumptions. At the same time, he patted Su Yukei's shoulder hard and abruptly changed the subject. Brother, do you know that I treat you as a brother, but you haven't even called me dad until now? Dad? Su Yukei showed a blank expression, as if he didn't keep up with Gao Qiang's jumping thoughts. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 74. Long Xianyao suddenly laughed out loud. You're not as boring as I thought. No, where does this go from here? Su Yukei rubbed the back of his head, not understanding how his brother and his father were related. You're still talking nonsense when you know it has nothing to do with it. Gao Qiang laughed and scolded angrily. Tell me, who did you hear say that I beat the war game? I. Before Su Yukei finished speaking, he was interrupted by a voice from behind. Everyone is here, let's get ready to take off. I don't think your counselor has enough time to wait for you. The speaker was a man dressed as a sergeant. Apparently, his military rank was much lower than that of Bayanian, and he also had a serious smile on his face. Suddenly interrupted and affected by the sergeant's emotions, everyone no longer had any intention of joking. As the 6 people were put on the helicopter, the sergeant immediately closed the helicopter's hatch. So, goodbye. The sergeant waved his hand, giving the pilot a sign to take off. Then with a sudden burst of sound, the helicopter flew directly towards the deserted area far away from the city. Where are you sending us? Long Xianyao was the first to frown. Being forcibly transferred to some top university made her dissatisfied with the military. In Long Xianyao's eyes, the direction in which the helicopter was flying now did not seem like the place where a serious academic force should appear. The co-pilot glanced back calmly. Except for Long Xianyao, the other 5 people, including Gao Qiang, did not have too much negative emotions. There was no need to worry about the helicopter crashing suddenly due to trouble. You'll know everything when you meet your counselor. After saying this, the co-pilot also turned around and stopped talking to the people in the cabin who were at the forefront of various war games. The helicopter flew for who knows how long. It wasn't until it was getting close to dusk that I suddenly seemed to hit a transparent barrier. Immediately, a scene of sudden enlightenment appeared in front of the 6 people. Where the helicopter was facing, a strange building stood. The building is half suspended in the sky, with several independent facilities rotating around its center. This is the highest institution of learning. The magnificent scene of the building in front of them almost fascinated everyone. Is this levitation technology or gravity technology? Someone couldn't help but ask. The only thing they can be sure of now is that these technologies are simply not available at the time they are in now. The driver still didn't respond to everyone's questions. He simply placed everyone at the entrance of the building and quickly left in the helicopter. So, we are isolated here now, Long Xianyao shrugged. Have you ever calculated how big that desolate area is along the way? Without the vehicle, there is no possibility for us to leave here. Snap, snap, snap. Suddenly, a sound of applause came from directly in front of the 6 people. She is such a vigilant little girl. In comparison, the well-deserved number 1, who had high hopes from several old professors, felt a little less interesting. What came out of the darkness was not a monster, but a young man wearing a smart suit. Judging from his appearance, he seems to be a few years older than Gao Qiang and others. Welcome to the highest university. I am your counselor. You can call me Mr. M. Mr. M looked at Gao Qiang. So, don't you have anything to ask? We deserve to be first. His words were full of declarative tone, as if he was simply stating a simple fact. But to put it this way, Gao Qiang really has a lot of questions to ask. How on earth did you know our rankings and prepare in advance to admit us to the highest university? Judging from Bayanian's list, Such a detailed list cannot be found out by asking other game lords. This so-called highest academy seems to have some kind of technology that can peek into the internal situation of war games. I didn't expect that the first question would be this. Mr. M knocked his head with a headache. Wouldn't this touch the truth of the world? But it has nothing to do with me. Mr. M raised the corner of his mouth and answered Gao Qiang's question without hesitation. Because this is the power from the academy. A behemoth from one of the top forces of the human race, a 9th level infinite battlefield, spanning many planes, the power of the academy. According to Mr. M's description, the plane where Gao Qiang is located is actually just a black box arranged by the academy. The only function here is to continuously produce talents for the academy and supply them to the battlefield of infinite war. Of course, that is something that only lords who have reached the top through the lord path can consider. For Gao Qiang and others, it is too early to think about these things now. Even Gao Qiang and others are not even considered non-staff members of the college. They are just ordinary students and are not included in the academy's influence. There are still many black box planes arranged by the academy. No matter how many geniuses die young, it will not hurt the academy. Only by becoming a counselor like Mr. M can you be considered to have one foot in the ranks of academy members. Wait, why don't I understand what you mean? Long Xianyao interrupted Mr. M. The content that Mr. M said did not exist in the information held by Teng Long Group. The more knowledgeable a person is, the more he cannot accept the existing knowledge being broken. And Long Xianyao is in this state at the moment. It is hard for her to imagine that the plane she has lived in since she was a child is a puppet controlled by a behemoth. The knowledge that everyone has learned is actually just a little kindness revealed by that behemoth. In this case, the academic tycoons and chaebol seem a little ridiculous. Mr. M looked at Long Xianyao and shook his head. Is it hard to believe? But this is your opportunity. Not everyone can get my guidance and get the opportunity to join the academy. Of course, all you need to do now is to fulfill the responsibilities of a student. Mr. M smiled slightly. Gao Qiang, as the undisputed number one, do you dare to compete with me in your best era? Only geniuses can join the highest institution, so every student who comes here is absolutely arrogant. For this reason, in the first lesson of the meeting, they, the counselors, have to personally suppress the arrogance of these geniuses. What? Without waiting for Gao Qiang to agree or refuse, the ground under his feet has become transparent. This is a perfect simulation of the war game, and the college's infinite-level computer High Prism is used to simulate the fast battle Mr. M explained. The Lord does not have to go down, there will be no danger to his life, it is completely composed of data, and the war time counted in months and years will be shortened to less than a few hours. If you are scared, I can let the 6 of you go together, it's okay, Mr. M comforted. No, no. Gao Qiang stared at the turntable in front of him and interrupted Mr. M. For some reason, in this fake simulation battle, the territory talent he drew was still, Fallen Empire. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the Fallen Empire? Author, Mi Shida Di. Chapter 75. After listening to Gao Qiang's words, Mr. M turned his eyes to the other 5 people, as if he wanted to know what others thought. Let me confirm first, you are developing in sync with us, right? Long Xianyao suddenly asked. Of course, Mr. M nodded. Long Xianyao stepped forward, then I'm sorry. If we can beat you, I hope you can let us go back. The next moment, she also entered the preparation stage of the war game, and then drew her own territory type. Mr. M smiled and did not respond. Obviously, he did not think he would lose. On the other side, Suyukai looked around and saw that the other 3 were just waiting and watching, so he ignored them. I'm with Brother Qiang. So, this time the opponent is 2 firsts and 1 second. Seeing that the remaining 3 did not move, Mr. M was a little disappointed. Not to mention that there is no point in having fewer people, winning does not seem to prove anything. But since it was Gao Qiang who personally refused to let all 6 people go, it would be better to let Gao Qiang learn a lesson. War begins. A prompt sound that was completely different from the war game sounded. Then, including Mr. M, everyone lost their sense of the outside world. Their eyes were dark, and they could only see a few people who had joined the game and a small area around their territory. This is the fog of war simulated by the high prism. In the simulation of the high prism, the Lord will have a god's perspective, but can only observe the known land. Mr. M explained while projecting the full picture of his territory. The fog of war shrouded all areas, so he didn't care what Gao Qiang and others saw of his territory. In this war game, the type of territory I drew is Arsenal. Arsenal. Introduction: this territory is extremely crazy about weapons, and the increase and increment of weapon types will make them happy. Effect 1: when you complete the research of a weapon, you will randomly obtain an additional weapon blueprint. Effect 2: the research speed of all weapon technology trees increases by 100%, and the research speed of all defense technology trees decreases by 100%. Effect 3: when manufacturing ammunition items, the manufacturing speed increases by 100%. What a disgusting territory type. On the other side, Long Xianyeo and Su Yukei's faces turned black, and it was obvious that the territory types they drew were quite ordinary. Village. Effect: your food production increases by 10%. Savage camp. Effect: you can recruit people from a lower era with half of the resources. With this type of territory, if one fails, the 2 of them will become runners-up in this duel. The gloomy and uncertain faces of the 2 were naturally seen by Mr. M. Mr. M couldn't help but chuckle. When you are unlucky and draw a territory type that is not satisfactory, you can't do anything. Is this the first and second place to win the war game? That's right, as a counselor of the highest institution, Mr. M naturally has some authority over this simulated battlefield. Adjusting your own territory type is a small trick that Mr. M secretly made. He must warn these so-called geniuses. The past is the past, the present is the present, don't take a moment of glory as eternity. According to their way of doing things, if they run into bad luck one day, they may not even have a chance to turn defeat into victory. Sometimes, the difference between a genius and a waste is just a little bit of luck. Brother Qiang, what is the type of territory you drew? Su Yukei couldn't help asking Gao Qiang. Both of them exposed each other's territory types, knowing that they couldn't rely on each other, and now only Gao Qiang could be relied on. Gao Qiang rubbed his chin. Fallen Empire, it's the same as before. In fact, he didn't know what the fog of war Mr. M was talking about. In front of Gao Qiang, the entire game world was clearly visible, and he didn't know where the fog of war was. Unlike war games, the game world simulated by Gao Prism is very small, and the Fallen Empire itself occupies a large area. Therefore, in the picture Gao Qiang saw, his Fallen Empire occupied 2/3 of the land in the center of this game world. The other 3 people were curled up in their own corners, completely unaware of Gao Qiang's situation. After showing the types of territories, Mr. M had demonstrated in person, telling everyone how to quickly complete early development in ancient times. Hunting, traps, herbal identification, and how to distinguish good from bad and respond when discovering a lord of the same race. It can be seen that Mr. M really wants to teach everyone something. Long Xianyeo watched Mr. M's explanation and actions. Although she was still full of vigilance against this highest institution of learning, she had to admit at this moment that compared to Mr. M, her early planning was completely chaotic. If she could sort out Mr. M's ideas and return to the Stone Age. Even if she could not extract excellent territory types, she could still enter the top 10 with her snowball-like explosive development. Mr. M suddenly stopped explaining and looked at the 3 people with a smile. A week has passed, and you still haven't developed. At this time, Long Xianyeo and Suyukei's faces changed suddenly. Just now, I just listened to Mr. M's explanation, and I didn't expect that the time of the simulated battlefield would go so fast. A short period of more than 10 minutes was equivalent to a week. According to Mr. M's snowballing speed, what can they use to catch up with him? Thinking of this, Gao Qiang casually sent a trade request to Long Xianyeo and Suyukei. Gao Qiang sent you a trade request. Long Xianyeo glanced at Gao Qiang strangely. The three of them had not developed. What could they trade? The other party traded with you, 10,000 tons of grain, 1,000 plants of herbs. Brother Qiang, Suyukei's voice sounded in shock. Long Xianyeo's mind was stunned for a moment. What the hell? Looking at the two people's confused and excited expressions, Gao Qiang scratched the back of his head. So it was too much. Gao Qiang didn't understand Mr. M's development theory very well, but it sounded very powerful. To be on the safe side, Gao Qiang sent half of the final strategic materials to each of them. That is to say, you don't need to consider other people's feelings in a simulation game. In a real war game, Gao Qiang still has to take into account the thoughts of his people. Looking at the startled expressions of the three people, Mr. M smiled softly. After all, they are still young people. They didn't realize how fast the simulation speed of the high prism was. In the few minutes they wasted, another day passed quietly. In fact, it is the same in war games. Falling behind others for a few minutes every day may not be noticeable in low-level battlefields, but what about the high-level battlefields in the future? A few minutes of waste every day will gradually evolve into a gap of years. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 76. Closer, closer. Because he couldn't develop at all, Gao Qiang could only watch the other three develop for half an hour in boredom. During this period, Suyukei and Long Xianyeo almost relied on a large amount of resources to pile up the number of people in the territory to thousands. And Mr. M was still developing steadily in the same place. He was too cautious. He was obviously very close, but he had not come into contact with Gao Qiang's territory until now. Looking at Gao Qiang's slack attitude, Mr. M frowned secretly. Although he couldn't see the situation of the three people's territories because of the fog of war. But since he reminded them, Long Xianyeo and Suyukei started their own operations and development. Only Gao Qiang continued to do nothing, and even ignored his explanation of some development outlines. Is it because he didn't draw a good territory type that he started completely? Mr. M couldn't help but look down on Gao Qiang. I didn't expect that the first place in a war game could make him so proud. If Gao Qiang still holds this mentality, it is not impossible to die in the next war game. But now, it's time to wake up these proud young men. Mr. M looked around his territory. Through this period of development, he has used the characteristics of the arsenal to point out the technology tree of exquisite bows and arrows. At the same time, he has mastered the ability to use animal fat to make flaming arrows. Now with hundreds of archers, Mr. M feels that he has the ability to put an end to this game. Thinking of this, Mr. M directly ordered hundreds of archers to sweep towards the places where the fog of war was not opened. Seeing that Mr. M finally took action, Gao Qiang subconsciously threw an estimate. In terms of military, the other party is as humble as an ant compared to us. After a while, Mr. M looked at the tall wall that blocked all the way, and showed a confused expression. He is in the Stone Age, right? Suddenly, a giant crossbow arrow shot out from the wall, forcing Mr. M to retreat his troops several kilometers. Just now, was that a bad crossbow? Mr. M looked at Gao Qiang and the other two with an expression of "Are you kidding me? What about development?" The three people on the opposite side had developed later than him, and Gao Qiang didn't even move. He had only walked a few steps. The crossbow was pointed at his face. Well, no wonder he didn't like to listen to the theory. The other side was playing magic in the Stone Age for him. That. Gao Qiang spread his hands embarrassedly. He actually hasn't got the reason for war against Mr. M yet. The type of fallen empire simulated by the High Prism is much more rigid than the real fallen empire. As long as there is no reason for war, Gao Qiang can hardly transfer anyone out. Counselor, how about you develop slowly for another 2 years? Gao Qiang's harmless words almost made Mr. M angry. The Stone Age should end in half a year at the latest, and Gao Qiang asked him to develop for another 2 years. This sounded like "I want you to have both hands and feet and a brain." Before Mr. M could reply, Su Yukai and Long Xianyeo's troops had already rushed out of the forest. Since Mr. M sent out his troops, the two of them also took action at the same time. Their ideas were surprisingly consistent. They crossed the wall of Zhao Qiang's territory and directly besieged Mr. M, gaining a 2-1 advantage in military strength. After seeing the types of troops brought out by the two, Mr. M felt a sense of beauty that went dark before his eyes. Cavalry, all cavalry. In the Stone Age, it was not only technology that restricted cavalry units, but also logistics and food supplies. As a result, Long Xianyeo and the other two brought out hundreds of cavalry units that consumed huge amounts of energy. Okay, you win. There was no need to fight at all, and Mr. M ended the simulation with a dark face. As for developing for another 2 years, Mr. M did not mention it at all. Losing was embarrassing enough. If he lost again after developing for another 2 years, he would probably jump off this floating academy. For a moment, Mr. M could not figure out what went wrong with his development. Why did the other party crush him several blocks in terms of troops and technology? The good mood of the day was gone, and Mr. M's tone became much colder. He took out 3 keys from his bosom and stretched out his hand directly in front of everyone. 3 two-person dormitories, you can choose them by yourself. As for the various facilities in the school, the senior students in charge will come to show you later. Long Xianyeo frowned slightly. From what the counselor Mr. M said, it seems that he still doesn't intend to let them go back. Excuse me for interrupting. It seems that you didn't discuss it with Teng Long Group before forcing me to enroll. Long Xianyeo couldn't help but said. No, in fact, of course we have discussed it. Facing Long Xianyeo's attempt to use force to pressure others, Mr. M seemed quite calm. In fact, if you have carefully read your admission notice, you will find that the names of both your parents have been signed on the enrollment report. Hearing what Mr. M said, everyone took out the admission notice again and looked at the lines of text carefully. What a joke, Long Xianyeo suddenly threw the admission notice to the ground. It's just a signature. How can you prove that it is not forged by you? Do you want to make a phone call to confirm? Mr. M suddenly took out his cell phone and handed it to everyone. Long Xianyeo subconsciously wanted to answer it, but Mr. M passed her by and handed it to Gao Qiang. You go first. After hesitating for a while, Gao Qiang took the phone and dialed the familiar number. He didn't know what other people's admission letters looked like. But Gao Qiang's admission letter stated the reasons for the consent of both parents. As long as Gao Qiang enrolled in the top institution, the two would receive a considerable bonus and the privilege of visa-free entry to tourist attractions around the world. The phone was quickly dialed. Hello, Gao Qiang asked. However, a blushing voice came from the other end of the phone. After several seconds, the other end seemed to react, and there was a little more urgency in the tone. It's Xiao Qiang, your dad, and I have something urgent. Remember to listen to the teacher's lectures at school. Hanging up. Ding. The phone was hung up instantly. Really don't care at all, Gao Qiang sighed helplessly. Cheng, parents are the true love, he is just an accident. However, due to the extremely high mortality rate of war games, in order to encourage childbirth, children from ordinary families like Gao Qiang are basically half supported by the society. Therefore, Gao Qiang did not have too much sadness. Although Su Yukei's conditions are better than Gao Qiang, they can get along well, which is also about the same. Like Gao Qiang, he quickly accepted the status quo. The phone was passed to Long Xianyeo. Unlike Gao Qiang, Long Xianyeo was born into a wealthy family and has been managing the family business with Long Xiwen for many years, so the family relationship is stronger. Therefore, the moment the phone was dialed, Long Xianyeo's questioning voice came over. Gao Qiang didn't know what the other party said, he only saw that Long Xianyeo's expression was getting worse and worse. In the end, he threw the phone directly to the ground. Mr. M's unhappy face suddenly became a little darker. Is there a possibility that it's my phone? Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shida. Chapter 77. Just ask my dad to compensate you. He has plenty of money anyway, Long Xianyeo said nonchalantly. Mr. M was silent for a moment, and did not mention the phone again. He turned around with a dark face and walked into the building. The phone is actually not a big deal. There is only one thing that bothers him: how did he lose? Just at this time, another person came out of the building. Mr. M, is this the junior student I want to take care of? Hey, Mr. M. Passing by Mr. M. After calling several times in a row, Mr. M did not respond. He just stuffed the dormitory key in his hand into the other party's hand and left quickly. Mr. M. The visitor looked at Mr. M's back, and then looked at the 3 keys in his hand. He was a little confused for a while. But he quickly adjusted his mentality and turned around with a smile. Hello everyone, I am your class leader, sophomore Qi Ling, you can just call me senior sister Qi. Seeing that no one spoke, Qi Ling couldn't help rubbing the corner of his clothes awkwardly. Well, Mr. M is not easy to get along with. For example, he will embarrass everyone when he first enters the school. Seniors have also experienced this. Don't take it to heart. But he lost. Gao Qiang suddenly interrupted. And brother Qiang also said that he could let him develop for another 2 years, Su Yukei added. The others nodded. Mr. M's welcome to the school this time was embarrassing for himself. Qi Ling was stunned for a moment. Then he laughed softly. No wonder Mr. M's face was so dark just now, Pucci. But you even beat Mr. M, don't you put on a happier expression. Mr. M is a famous counselor in the highest institution of learning. The kind that doesn't even approve leave notes. Gao Qiang suddenly noticed a few words. You mean, we usually have vacations? After hearing what Gao Qiang said, the other 5 people also reacted and quickly focused their attention and listened to Qi Ling's subsequent speech. Being brought into the Supreme University by the military, they thought that there would be some kind of full military management here. Even Long Xianyeo felt the same way. She knew more than everyone else, so she knew that there was a special mysterious team in the army that was specifically responsible for carrying out the task of plundering land when land loss was too large. Of course, the death rate of that team was also ridiculously high. What do you think of us, a prison? Qi Ling held her forehead and sighed. What kind of mess did Mr. M make for her? I always felt that these juniors were very hostile to the Supreme University. The status of the Supreme University is above the military. Even the 5-star generals of the military cannot interfere with all the decisions of the Supreme University. But to some extent, we also cooperate with the military. For example, during your vacation, the military dispatched vehicles to take you to and from school. Gao Qiang turned his head and looked at Long Xianyeo. From Qi Ling's words, the Supreme University did not seem as bad as Long Xianyeo said. It sounds like an ordinary university. No, there is no university in this world. Gao Qiang suddenly remembered that he accidentally replaced his senses in his previous life. In this world, after leaving the war game, if you are not prepared to enter the war game again, naturally, you will become an ordinary person on the street, and there is no need to learn the knowledge of the war game. Only those who are ready to continue to wage war will join various schools, which is what Long Xianyeo calls the school clique. Of course, the school cliques do not just accept people. The top schools not only require talent and grades, but also superior family background. Often, a pass to a top school is hard to come by. Forget it, you come with me first, I will take you to familiarize yourself with the facilities in the school. Qi Ling greeted a few people. As a senior sister in charge of the class, it is naturally her task to familiarize her classmates with the campus. Along the way, Qi Ling took Gao Qiang and his party to visit the various facilities of the highest school. Dormitories, lecture halls, canteens, libraries, many things are no different from the university in Gao Qiang's memory. Even in the library, there are tens of thousands of different books about war games. Although most of these books are free knowledge that should be fully popularized according to policy, they are considered to be paid items in some top universities. However, in the highest universities, even if the library is completely free, it is still empty, and it seems that no students are interested in the books here. Occasionally, when meeting one or two people in the library, Qi Ling will quietly shake her head after they leave. And warned Gao Qiang and others, these are all losers of the war game. I hope you will not become like them in the future. Facing the confusion of Gao Qiang and others, Qi Ling did not explain, but took everyone to the last facility in the university that she had not introduced yet. Here, students come in and out from time to time, and the flow of people is much more than that of the library. The Wisdom Center is controlled by the infinite-level computer Omega of the college. Qi Ling explained the function of the facility in front of him. Among the huge forces in various human planes, there are some forces that can distribute and sell their own intelligence through some means. Due to the different power systems, the information scattered in the gaps of various planes is difficult to organize and interpret. The college's infinite computer Omega is designed for this purpose. Under the control of Omega, the lower-level schools under the college distributed in various planes have the ability to search for that information. Gao Qiang understood some of Qi Ling's words. In simple terms, the various large forces of mankind have created public web pages one after another. But web pages alone are useless. Therefore, the top forces such as the college have ended up. What Omega provides is a search engine that can search these web pages, as well as a visual browser. Do you know why you can enroll, but others can't? Qi Ling suddenly turned around and asked everyone. Long Xianyeo frowned. Why? Because you have money. Are you kidding? Long Xianyeo looked at Qi Ling with an expression of looking at a fool. After several contacts, she was sure that among the people who enrolled, she was the only one who came from a chaebol power. If we talk about wealth, it would be better to say that there are more wealthy people among those who have not enrolled. I am not talking about the currency issued by this plane. Without the support of top forces, that kind of currency system can collapse at any time. Qi Ling paused for a moment before continuing, the currency I am talking about is the war coin. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shi De Di. Chapter 78. After hearing the war coin, Gao Qiang finally understood why they were the ones enrolling. Because on that list, there are only 6 lords whose contribution is much higher than that of ordinary people. In other words, they will have more war coins settled on them. Knowledge has a price. Among the lords who have returned this time, you are the only one who has the financial resources to obtain real knowledge, Qi Ling explained. This is why you can enroll in school. Most of the information in the Wisdom Center of the highest university requires war coins as a fee. Of course, as an institution established by the college, all free knowledge stipulated by the college will be provided by the highest institution for free. This time Gao Qiang finally understood why Qi Ling sighed at the people reading in the library when she passed by it. Presumably those are the losers who have failed in the war game and can no longer pay the price of knowledge. They can only passively absorb what others want them to know, and they cannot guarantee whether the information is out of date. The real winners go online here. The information you can get here is more timely and advanced, and the search for information is also more accurate. Promise. Qi Ling suddenly stretched out his hand and handed over the 3 keys. You too can choose your own dormitory. I don't know why you are hostile to the academy, but if you don't want to join the academy, don't worry. As students, you are not actually considered part of the academy. When your lord level reaches a certain level, you may be forced to leave this plane by the military because the weight of the land you represent is too high. At that time, you can choose your favorite forces among those specialized warplanes. Gao Qiang thought for a moment and suddenly asked, wouldn't the academy regard this behavior as a kind of betrayal? No way. Qi Ling shook her head. There are too few lords who can enter the infinite battlefield, so most of the so-called geniuses are useless to the academy. They don't mind letting them out to other forces to enhance the overall strength of mankind. And the academy won't pay anything for you. Although we provide free facilities and accommodation, all valuable knowledge needs to be purchased by you. At this time, following everyone, a thin boy with no presence suddenly stretched out his hand. What do I need to do if I want to join the academy? Hearing this, Qi Ling suddenly smiled. Joining the academy is not a simple matter. If you want to join the academy, you must first accumulate enough credits and then pass the 4-level assessment. In the end, only by completing one more faculty assessment can we barely get into the bottom rung of the college. Of course, the grade level exams are not difficult. Most of them test developmental abilities and strategic vision. Gao Prism personally oversees the exams. After talking about the difficulty of joining the academy, Qi Ling then explained the benefits that can be obtained by actually joining the academy. After passing the first grade examination, they can enter the lecture hall and obtain valuable teaching resources from major professors. After the second grade exam, you will get the opportunity to ask questions to the professor once a week. Although it is not as accurate as the Wisdom Hub, it is better in that all the costs are paid by the academy and they do not need to worry about it. As for the future grade examinations, there will naturally be more benefits, but Qi Ling has not reached that grade yet. Suyukai suddenly came over and poked Gao Qiang. Brother Qiang, I suddenly feel that it would be good to join the academy. What do you think? Not only Suyukai, but also everyone except Long Xianyao was interested. However, Gao Qiang rolled his eyes at Suyukai. I feel like I have to kneel in the first exam. According to Qi Ling, what was tested in the first exam? Its development. According to the territory type of his fallen empire, not a single resource building can be built. Gao Qiang can already imagine his grades when he takes the exam. Full points for the answer, 0 points for the steps. Thinking of this, Gao Qiang took a dormitory key from Qi Ling. He is now going to take a look at the Wisdom Hub, and does not intend to continue listening to Qi Ling's next explanation about joining the academy. Qi Ling naturally had no objection to this. In every class, there will be some students whose ambitions are not in the college, and the college has never interfered. But the road ahead for them will have to be paid for entirely by themselves, which is extremely bumpy. Hey, Brother Qiang, wait for me. Suyukai glanced at Qi Ling, hesitated, and then chased Gao Qiang. So, is this what it looks like inside a smart hub? Entering the smart hub, Gao Qiang and Suyukai were suddenly lifted high into the sky by the ground beneath their feet, and were fixed in an open position. Here, except for the interface delivered by Omega, the rest is a void covered by countless dark green data strips. Please inquire what you want to know. Each query requires 10 war coins. Suyukei's eyes widened. Did he start charging from the moment of inquiry? No wonder so many people are not even qualified to step into the academy. Because for most lords participating in war games for the first time, they cannot even afford a query. But Gao Qiang didn't feel anything. He has 90,000 war coins, but 10 war coins are not even a fraction of his. And at this moment, he just wants to check a lot of things. For example, the Fallen Empire. Gao Qiang entered the term of the Fallen Empire in the search interface without hesitation. Then a large number of similar web pages popped up. After eliminating most of the irrelevant content, only one recently published web page remained. Published by the Power Knowledge of All Things, inventory of the top 100 new territory types in recent times. An eye-catching gossip inventory post, but the price of unlocking it is as high as 10,000 war coins. The reason is that this inventory includes several related territory types on the 6th level battlefield. The price of knowledge is so expensive. However, in this post, Gao Qiang found that the Fallen Empire was only ranked 10th in recent times. So he thought and bought it. Click on the full post. What you see is the interpretation of the advantages and disadvantages of each territory type by All Things, which includes early advantages, mid-term development speed, late-term strength, and other major aspects. Negative states, applicability in different battlefields, and some minor considerations were also taken into account. In terms of information volume, 10,000 war coins are definitely worth it, but this is definitely not for a lord like Gao Qiang who has just entered the first level path. Gao Qiang first looked at the type ranked first. He was a little curious about why he was ranked 10th. However, Gao Qiang's face soon became a little strange. It's not that the first one is not strong, but it's a little hard to describe. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the Fallen Empire? Author, Mi Shida Di. Chapter 79. In the ranking of the Know-It-All. The first place is a new territory type from the 6th level battlefield. Legacy of the Void. Introduction. The people of this territory are the descendants of the Void and have completely broken away from the shackles of land. Effect 1. In battlefields of level 6 and above, all buildings have no land requirements. Effect 2. All buildings, including military buildings, have the ability to navigate the universe. Effect 3. All unit jump efficiency increases by 30%, and all unit navigation speed increases by 10%. Effect 4. Planet habitability decreases by 100%. According to the evaluation of the Know-It-All, this territory type is quite flexible. Although it will only appear in battlefields above level 6, and does not have the suppression power of the latter few. But its unique territory characteristics are destined to make this territory attackable and evasive. The ability to move fortress buildings also makes the practicality of this territory type reach the extreme. After all, in the high-level universe battlefield, the speed advantage is infinitely magnified, and superior mobility is almost equivalent to the arrival of victory. Then, Gao Qiang also found that the Fallen Empire was also brought out to be trampled. In the eyes of Bai Shaitang, although the Fallen Empire has the characteristics of full technology at the beginning, its mobility is almost zero. After a strong early stage, the characteristics of being unable to accumulate explosions in the middle stage make it very likely that the Fallen Empire will be quickly caught up at this stage. The most important thing is that this type of territory has never appeared in the battlefield after the Stone Age, and its applicability to high-level battlefields is unknown. However, even if the two talents of Legacy of the Void and the Fallen Empire meet in the battlefield of level 6 or above, Bai Shaitang is still confident that Legacy of the Void only needs to temporarily avoid the edge in the early stage. Steady development can slowly eat up the fallen empire in the later stage. This is the benefit of flexibility. Gao Qiang continued to look at the territory types listed by Bai Shaitang. In fact, most of the top-ranked territory types are related to their debut in high-level battlefields. After all, the higher the level of the battlefield, the more unique the territory type that appears, and the more it fits the style of the high-level battlefield. Few people expect that the type of territory that can fight all the way to infinite war will appear in the Stone Age. It is quite incredible to compare the fallen empire that appears in the first-level battlefield with the territory type in the sixth-level battlefield. If we follow this classification method, the fallen empire can appear in the top 10, maybe it is still an exception for the statistics made by Bai Shaitang. As Gao Qiang looked down, the more he looked, the more he felt that Bai Shaitang's classification method was a bit strange. Bai Shaitang's classification does not look at actual results, but classifies in a way that I think. I think this type, as long as how to develop, can achieve what kind of heaven-defying results, so he can be ranked in this position. Unknowingly, he turned to the last territory type, and Gao Qiang found that there was a reply under this post. Although the cost of replying is a full 1,000 war coins, there are actually thousands of comments. The latest news is that the number 1 Legacy of the Void was beaten to pieces by the number 99 Jianghe Yanggu in the Ring Star battlefield. It is said that the Eldar Lord who drew the Legacy of the Void, in addition to escaping quickly, was dozens of streets behind us in development. With this lame development ability, the know-it-all kept talking about the invincible mobile fortress, but he didn't even have a bulkhead until his death. War games are just for fun. If you really want to learn something, you have to look at the know-it-all. You can understand it as soon as you think about it, but you can't do it as soon as you play it. The most powerful know-it-all will teach you how to play the war game step by step. Reading the comments one by one, Gao Qiang found that almost all the comments were mocking the know-it-all organization. Although they are well informed and have the means to grasp all kinds of real-time intelligence, what they like to do most is subjective assumptions. Territory types that are often imagined to be powerful by the know-it-all will eventually be unable to exert their imagined strength due to various major deficiencies. Not just this version of the top 100 territory types. All the inventories that Bai Shaitang had done were almost never matched. Even those who were ranked first in the inventory basically did not end up well, and they all asked for a hammer and got a hammer. Therefore, Bai Shaitang was also given the title of poisonous milk by the human race. Over time, it was found that more war coins could be earned in this way, and Bai Shaitang was even happy to make the inventory in the style of gossip. And the major forces have become accustomed to Bai Shaitang's behavior. Although the ranking is a joke, Bai Shaitang still provides a very comprehensive information on each type of territory. The Fallen Empire can be ranked 10th, and Bai Shaitang naturally talked about a lot of advantages, exaggerating it to the sky, and even some of them were not thought of by Gao Qiang himself. And the actual price of this post is not that expensive. Averaged over hundreds of territory types, the information of each territory type only costs 100 war coins, which can be said to be extremely conscientious. After all, these are recent information, and it is impossible to get such knowledge from the books in the library. Moreover, Gao Qiang actually found something that interested him among the hundreds of territory types. It was a territory talent that ranked last among the top 100. The Rebel Temple from the second-level battlefield, according to the information from Bai Shaitang, is controlled by an elf lord from the elves. The most important thing is that in the information, Bai Shaitang mentioned the word Kabbalah, which made Gao Qiang think of the anti-Kabbalah source that broke into his body. Perhaps, there is some connection? Indistinctly, Gao Qiang guessed that the elf lord in the information might be one of the 9 beings he sensed. If it is really as Gao Qiang thought, then according to the information from Bai Shaitang, the location of this lord has been completely exposed to Gao Qiang. Of course, Gao Qiang's understanding of the anti-Kabbalah source is far from enough. After exiting the inventory, Gao Qiang continued to open the search engine and entered the keywords into it. Anti-Kabbalah source. Among the web pages that popped up this time, the most popular one is that the saints sincerely invite all major forces to jointly attack the Kabbalah tree of life of the elves. This is a bounty order for the entire elf plane issued by the saints of the human race, but the price of the admission ticket alone requires a full 3,000 war coins. The benefits are obvious. The saint will share all known intelligence in the post, and the value of this information will be far more than 3,000 war coins. The saint promises not to take any money from the gains from conquering the tree of life. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 80. Gao Qiang did not spend the 3,000 war coins directly. It was not that he could not afford it. After all, Gao Qiang spent 10,000 war coins without blinking an eye. But spending these 3,000 war coins was equivalent to being connected with the saints, and no one knew whether it was good or bad. Of course, Gao Qiang was more curious about the relationship between the saints and the Kabbalah tree of life. Then Gao Qiang bypassed the top page and spent a few hundred war coins to buy some gossip. Although they were all small gossips, Gao Qiang also roughly sorted out the situation of the saints and the Kabbalah tree of life. Both are behemoths that have been in the 5th to 6th level battlefields for many years. Often participating in a war game, the land gained and lost is calculated in hundreds of millions of square kilometers. Among them, the Kabbalah tree of life has a characteristic that whenever it breeds offspring, some special offspring will be born randomly. Just like the Gong-seeing sword can bring props that do not belong to the war game into the war game. The special offspring of the Kabbalah tree of life are the same. It's just that what they brought into the war game was not props, but Kabbalah essence. Different Kabbalah essence can bring different effects to them. They are natural leaders. With their presence in the war game, the elves will be invincible. Killing them is meaningless, because the power of Kabbalah essence belongs to the Kabbalah tree of life. Even if the individual who uses the essence dies, there will be new individuals who gain the power of the essence and maintain the number of 10 essence. Logically speaking, it is almost impossible for the Kabbalah tree of life and the 10 essence to perish. But it is only logical. The change of events occurred in a low to medium level war game. The crown representing Essence I, together with several other elf lords who also mastered Kabbalah essence, killed 3 sons of the saints of the human race. Those were all seed players cultivated by the saints and had the opportunity to touch the high-level battlefield. The saints absolutely cannot swallow this bad breath. So there is the current scene, where the saints sincerely invite major forces and geniuses to jointly attack the Kabbalah tree of life. However, Gao Qiang still couldn't find any information related to the anti-Kabbalah essence from these rumors. The saints, on the other hand, have a good reputation except for the common problem of human forces that beating the younger ones will attract the older ones. Gao Qiang simply spent 3,000 war coins to accept the saints' bounty post. One reason is to obtain information. The second reason is that according to other people's views on the saints, even if he doesn't accept the bounty, he won't be hostile to the saints. It can only be said that it is worthy of the post sent by the leader himself. Many information that can't be bought with more war coins in other places can be seen here. Among them, Gao Qiang wants to know about the anti-Kabbalah essence. Because he couldn't bear the anger of being killed 3 saints in a row, the saints found a curse that destroyed the stability of the Kabbalah tree of life. And planned an epic defeat, sending the land that he had arranged the curse to the Kabbalah tree of life. When the Kabbalah tree of life began to absorb nutrients from those lands, the saint's goal had been achieved. Now, after the owner of the Kabbalah essence died, the elves born again by the Kabbalah tree of life have a certain probability of inheriting the anti-Kabbalah essence when inheriting the Kabbalah essence. The elves with the anti-Kabbalah essence will have the characteristics completely opposite to the Kabbalah essence, and will strip the Kabbalah essence from the body of the Tree of Life. Once they die in the war game, these anti-Kabbalah essence will not return to the embrace of the Kabbalah Tree of Life, but can be directly taken away and used by foreign lords. If all 10 essences are taken away, the Kabbalah Tree of Life will wither and fall into eternal silence. And this is the revenge prepared by the saints. Without the Tree of Life, that plane will no longer be able to breed new elves. They want to cut off the roots of those elves. However, at the bottom of the post, the saints still made a promise to all those who accepted the bounty. Any lord who obtains the anti-Kabbalah essence can directly join the saints and obtain the status of the Son of God. Gao Qiang suddenly smiled. From this point of view, the saints have a good idea. Lost 3 sons of God, and gained 10 new sons of God with the Kabbalah essence. Even if only half of the lords are willing to join the saints can still make a profit without losing money on the premise of revenge. But if you say so, if you want to, you can actually be regarded as the son of the saint now. Gao Qiang opened the wargame interface and looked at the anti-Kabbalah essence V in his personal attributes, thinking so. At the same time, Gao Qiang also thought of the matter of the Wuji League Gongxing Zhan. Now that he has been marked by the Wuji League, they should not let him go so easily. I just don't know how the Wuji League mentioned by Gongxing Zhan compares with the Academy and the Saints. Gao Qiang casually searched for information about the Wuji League in the engine. According to the search results, the Wuji League comes from a Xianhua plane, and Taoism is the main foundation of the alliance. But in terms of power, the highest area where the Wuji League can be found is the 5th level battlefield. Although they have a lot of means, their overall power is 1 level lower than that of the Saints, not to mention a behemoth like the Academy. Seeing this, Gao Qiang already understood. Whether he joins the Academy or the Saints, the threat of the Wuji League to him will no longer be considered a threat. But what puzzled Gao Qiang was, from the search results, the Wuji League did not seem to promote revenge, nor did it mention the death of Ko Xiaikan. This approach is completely different from the Saints, who wanted to let the whole world know about the death of 3 saints. It can only be said that it is worthy of being the force that taught Ko Xiaikan. The Wuji League was a little quiet, so quiet that it was scary. If it weren't for the Wuji League's mark still marked on his personal panel, Gao Qiang would even think that this matter had passed. While Gao Qiang was thinking, a friend request from the war game was sent. Player Pilgrim requests to add you as a friend. Who is this? Gao Qiang looked at the unfamiliar name and agreed to the other party's friend request. Soon a message was passed by the other party. Group message, do not reply. This is the correspondent of the Saint organization. I just saw that you bought and accepted our bounty through the Omega computer of the Academy. For your personal safety when you attack the Kabbalah Tree of Life, here is an internal message for you for free. What was passed on was a long list of introductions to the anti-Kabbalah essence. Reading the text line by line, Gao Qiang's pupils shrank instantly. Anti-Kabbalah essence, use after purification. According to the description in the information, if the anti-Kabbalah essence is used directly, the personality will be gradually replaced. And within 1 breathing cycle of the Kabbalah Tree of Life, it will be assimilated into a particle of the tree and completely become a part of the tree. And 1 breathing cycle of the Kabbalah Tree of Life. It is only a short half a year.